So moms or anybody who could perhaps contribute to the idea or the query, can you think of something that moms consistently try to keep clean or tidy that others consistently try to undo? June. The laundry room, the kitchen, what else? The hallway, the bathroom. The bathroom is definitely all of it. I think Judy, that's right. All of it, right? There's this constant putting together, this constant work in one direction, right? Constant work in one direction, and it seems like there's this constant unraveling or undoing or work in the opposite direction. Perhaps you've seen the opposite sides of a tapestry. Have you guys ever seen this? So this picture is small, but it really is my favorite of the ones that I looked at this week. So when you look at the back end, there it goes, just completely disheveled, completely knotted, torn, ugly, goofy. And then on the other side, though, just this really beautiful work where it seems like they are in contrast, right? It seems like they are in contrast. And yet there is this beautiful work and this beautiful end in the work. I want to begin today with a prophetic word from the prophet Isaiah. So you'll find this in the book of Isaiah, beginning in verse 18 of chapter 43. It's a familiar one, right? Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. Perhaps you have reflected upon or heard somebody really lean into this very encouraging word from the heart of God as recorded in the prophet Isaiah, right? See, I am doing a new thing. I believe wholeheartedly that that's true for our church in this season. But there's something really wonderful that happened in our Bible reading this week that made me think about or call to mind this verse again in a wonderful new cross connection from one section of Scripture to another. So perhaps you've seen these. They are all over our sanctuary chairs this morning. They are our brand new bookmarks for the summer. So this will be our summer reading plan. And as we step into the summer, we're going to begin next week with a new sermon series. We're in between sermon series this week. We're going to really kind of put all of our weight on our Bible reading plan. You'll notice that next week on Friday, we'll read Acts chapter 1. So next Sunday, we're going to begin a sermon series where we look at Acts and a sermon series we're going to call Now What? So I would invite you to join us next week for the beginning of Now What? But right now we're reading the story of Joseph in our reading plan that we call Listening Together. The reason why we call it Listening Together is intentional. I don't know how many different reading plans you've been a part of, but ours is a 1 chapter a day, 5 days a week reading plan. We do have these bookmarks. We have it available online as well through our website. With a couple of clicks, you can find the digital version of this. It's in the seat next to you. And much more than like a to-do list, right? All of these chapters that you see on the bookmark, it's not a to-do list. It's not make sure you read all of these between now and Labor Day weekend. I like to refer to it much more as an appointment book. So on Monday, I would invite you to meet God in Genesis chapter 42. And if you forget and you skip or you oversleep or you have whatever, don't try to do Monday's work on Tuesday. On Tuesday, just meet him in his word in Genesis 43. Now, I will say, in this particular instance, all of the green Genesis days that you see there are one story, the story of Joseph. And it's a quite captivating tale. So perhaps this is one that you might want to read every single chapter of, which is why we do Monday through Friday. We give ourselves Saturday and Sunday. And if we miss a couple days, then we can keep ourselves in good pace with that. But it really is an appointment book. And you can see all throughout the different words that are written here on the bookmark that our aim is to hear from God. I'm going to spoil a bit of the story if you're unfamiliar with the story of Joseph. Because the story of Joseph, maybe you've heard of it. If you've been around church, you went to Vacation Bible School. The story of Joseph is the story about a young boy who is like one of the favorite sons of a dad. He's got many brothers. He's the young brother, and he gets this special coat that his dad makes, the coat of many colors, like Dolly Parton even wrote a song about it, right? This coat of many colors. And from the jump, from an early age, man, this guy causes some trouble, it seems, when really from an early age, he's got this deep and interesting connection with God. And that deep and interesting connection with God begins to get him in some trouble. He has two dreams. In each of the dreams, whether it is like these stalks of wheat or these stars in the sky, they gather around his stalk of wheat or his star in the sky, and everything bows down to him. He gets up the next day and he says, hey, brothers, guess what I dreamed about? I had this dream that all of you guys were bowing down to me, right? And so he's the favored son. He's got this special coat. He's having these weird dreams. And the brothers begin to build up a pretty significant heart of bitterness toward him to the point where they run off and take care of dad's sheep. So they're off in another country. And the dad says, hey, go check on your brothers. So he goes. And as he is walking up to them, they see him off in the distance and they make a plan. Let's kill him, right? Let's put an end to our misery of this brother that we're sick of. So they make up a plan to take his coat, to kill like a beast or kill an animal and put that blood all over the coat and then like throw him into a ditch. And then one brother was like, I don't like this idea. One brother felt like really heavy-hearted about it and didn't want to go through with it. And so instead, they just threw him in the ditch, right? And then as he's there in the ditch and they're close by, they haven't left yet, they see this caravan coming by and they're like, hey, why would we just like leave him to die when we could make some money off of him? And so they sell him into slavery, right? They sell him into slavery. And then, then they do take his coat, they do dip it in the blood, they do go to the father and say, hey, he died. Right? And so this sends Joseph off on this wild, wild ride of life. Because when he gets to Egypt, right, he then becomes like, like a head chief slave. He ends up in Potiphar's house, which is like next in charge of all things in Egypt. And so Potiphar finds favor with Joseph, and Joseph becomes like his like right-hand man. He's in charge of everything in Potiphar's house. And then Potiphar's wife goes, hey, Joseph, whew, you're looking good, right? And so Potiphar's wife wants to hook up with Joseph. And Joseph's like, no, man, I'm not doing that because he's a man of integrity. I'm not going to have any part of that. She won't take no for an answer to the point to where she grabs his robe and he runs off naked. And she's like, cool, I have an opportunity to do something here. So she screams and she yells like she's been attacked. Somebody comes rushing in to find out what's going on, and she said, that Hebrew tried to like have his way with me. And so she accuses him of the very thing that she was trying to make happen, but she made him look at fault. And so he gets to run off to prison. And then in prison, he interprets two dreams. Two guys get thrown into prison with him, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. They had these dreams, and one guy, after getting thrown into prison, gets to go back to his post. The other guy gets killed. And so Joseph, when they send the chief cupbearer back to his post after being in jail, Joseph interpreting, he says, hey, please remember me, right? Please remember me. It's crazy. So this whole story is like 15 chapters long. I'm only in the first two. This is all what we read this week, right? And so the cupbearer is back in Pharaoh's presence. He's doing his job in the house of Pharaoh, in the company of Pharaoh. And Pharaoh has a dream, right? Pharaoh has this dream of these 7 cows that are fat that come out of the water, and then 7 cows that are super skinny come out of the water, and they eat the fattened calves. So they eat the cows. And he's like, what is this? And he has a dream about stalks of wheat, that there are 7 stalks of wheat that come up, and they're big and full and huge, and then 7 very thin, decrepit and weak stalks shoot up, and they eat the first 7. So he's like, man, what does this dream mean? He's trying to figure it out. Pharaoh's like, can anybody tell me what this dream means? And then the chief cupbearer goes, oh my goodness, I forgot all about Joseph, right? 2 years later, oh my goodness. And he even says, man, I messed this up. And so he's like, Pharaoh, I know a guy. So, and so Joseph gets to get his face shaved and some fresh clothes on, and he goes into the company of Pharaoh, and he tells Pharaoh his dream, right? That's about where we are today in the story. I want to jump to the very end, though, because there is a point, and if you heard the story, you're familiar with this. There's a point where Joseph is in charge of all of Egypt. There's the Pharaoh, and then there's Joseph. Pharaoh's really the only thing that you can't be is me. Everything else you're in charge of, right there under the Pharaoh. And that is the point, the dreams were about, 7 years of plenty and then 7 years of famine. So when the 7 years of famine hit, and Joseph is in charge of all the things, so they were gathering from the 7 years of plenty so that they would have food in the 7 years of famine, he gets to run in back with his brothers. Only now he's, in charge of everything, and his brothers don't even recognize him or know who he is. So this whole fiasco goes on, and we'll get to read about it over the course of the next 2 weeks. And I do invite you to enjoy this. It's a really cool story. But at the very, 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 very end, they're all reconciled. And Joseph is very kind to his brothers. But then his dad passes away. And they go from Egypt back to the land that they're from. This huge caravan goes to have this week-long memorial mourning service. And after that's over, they're making their way back to Egypt, and the brothers begin to get nervous because dad is dead. And so they're like, what if his anger awakens? Right? And what if he gets mad? What if now that dad's gone, he has the room to express how he really feels about what we did to him? So they still have this shame, this guilt, this fear, this cloud of yesterday hanging heavy in their hearts. And so they say, will you, dad said, will you please forgive us? And then Joseph says this. Genesis 50, the last chapter in the book of Genesis, Joseph said to them, do not be afraid. Am I in the place of God? He says, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. I do appreciate the New International Version here and the way that it's translated, because the verb for intended, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, it is the exact same verb, right? So there's something really beautiful that's being said here, right? Joseph, in what he is communicating, is not doing a flip-flop. It's not yeah, I know you meant evil, but God did this good thing, right? It does not say you meant evil, but God used it for good, right? He's not trying to dismiss the evil. He's not trying to say that God flip-flopped it. It's really way more beautiful than that. Really, if you were to take a transliteration of what it says there, he says, hey, your aim was evil. That was the core of your heart. That was your devising. You were devising evil, but God was devising good. Going back to Isaiah, see, I am doing a new thing. God is always doing a good thing. As a matter of fact, if there's one new thing thought that I would like for you to put in your pocket and take home this week, it's this: God's heart is always for your good. God's heart is always for your good. And I'll say this, man, Joseph's story reminds us that he will do good things in good time. But I haven't even gotten to the connection that I really thought was just so powerful in our reading of this story. That happened on Friday in Genesis chapter 41. Like I said, we got to the point right now where Joseph goes into the company of Pharaoh. He tells, these are what your dreams are all about. And Pharaoh was like, man, if this dude is right, who else would we put in charge of this whole 14-year fiasco except for this guy? Anybody smarter than him? Anybody closer to God than he is? I want to put this guy in charge. The Pharaoh actually takes off his signet ring, and he puts his signet ring on Joseph's finger. He gives him these clothes. He gives him a wife. What? He gives him a wife, and the wife, in the 7 years of plenty, bears him 2 children. We read this on Friday. Check this out. It says, before the years of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph by Asenath, daughter of Potiphera, priest of On. Joseph named the firstborn Manasseh. And Manasseh is actually it sounds very similar to the word in Hebrew for forget. So Joseph named his firstborn Forget. This is because God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household. Then he had a second son, and the second son he named Ephraim. Ephraim means double fruitful. Double fruitful. He said, it is because God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering. You guys beginning to follow me in this connection from Genesis 41 to Isaiah 43. The first son was named forgetful. The second son was named fruitful. Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I'm making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. I just love, we can start here in Genesis 41, but that last phrase. I would invite you even to allow that phrase to hop off the pages of Scripture and rest in your heart and in your lap. God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering. God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering. I don't know what painful moments in your wake or in your moments right now are heavy on your heart, but I do know this, that God's work, despite those realities, is for your good. He has this way, constant, faithful, and true, of making much of any situation, regardless of the situation. In fact, I'd put it this way. Man, I would say this, God will produce a harvest even in the havoc of your life. God will produce a harvest even in the havoc of your life. Man, I was reading from 1 Samuel this week. I would invite you to go there if you just want to have, because I remember the story of Samuel. Samuel was entrusted to Eli, right? Eli was the prophet and the teacher at the beginning of the book of Samuel. So there's this story of Hannah, who was Samuel's mom, who was barren. And Hannah was like a dual wife of another guy, and the other wife had lots of kids. And that other wife, often hung that over the head, the heart, and the shame of Hannah. Like year after year after year, she would just bring it up. Hey, don't forget, I have kids and you don't. I have kids and you don't. Havoc, heartbreak, right? And then even Eli, right? He's got 2 sons that have completely turned their heart against the Lord. What I love about the beginning of 1 Samuel is there's a lot of havoc, and yet there's also harvest. Now, in Hannah's story turns very beautiful because she has a boy named Samuel. That's why she's in the beginning of the story. Eli's story with his sons is not beautiful. Cliffhanger, go read it. I'm seriously, it's havoc. It's just, ugh. Like it ends with a lump, ugh. And yet, Eli's heart is God will produce a harvest. Eli's heart stays strong and completely always thinking good thoughts toward the Lord. He does not get embittered toward the Lord. God will produce a harvest even in the havoc of your life. We were looking at God has made me fruitful in the land of suffering. I would allow you to even remove that last phrase and just say, man, God has made me fruitful. God has made me fruitful. Talk about an affirmation. Like Joseph was naming a son and marking this moment in the long story of his life. But he spoke these words over himself, and I invite you to speak these words over yourself. God has made you fruitful. Another thought you can put in your pocket and take home. You have not messed your way beyond his mastery. Right? Some circumstances, man, they just come upon us in life, and that's what it is, right? They're hard, they're havoc. We just wake up one morning and we got this in our laps, whether we asked for it or not. Sometimes we messed it up, right? We messed it up. I got a text this morning from our man Mike. Let's give it up for our man Mike right now. Come on, give it up. Mike, I love you and I appreciate you. He texted me because, he's still a little bit new around here, even though it's almost been a year. He was like, can I wear a hat at church today? Because I messed up my haircut. Right? And I said, absolutely. Because I was already here. I was like, man, please wear a hat. Because you had not messed up your way beyond his mastery, right? Then he walks in for rehearsal, and he ain't got no hat on. I'm like, bro, I want to talk about you during the sermon. Where's the hat? And he was like, my wife wouldn't let me wear it. I was like, no, you got to wear the hat, man. Right? I bet whether, ladies, whether it was I don't know, whether it was a weird nail appointment or perhaps you messed up the eyebrows. All of us have had a moment where we messed something up. But can I just tell you, God has made you fruitful. From the jump, he's always working for your good. Developing you, nurturing you. Man, dare I say mothering you, smothering you with his consistent, beautiful, perfect, patient heart, his powerful, capable ways. And yeah, man, we goof it up. We do. We can make a mess of things. But his work is stunning. His work is stunning. So with all that in mind, what's our next step? This is the one next step that I want to put in front of you today. I would invite you to set your heart on the good things that God is growing in your life. I'm going to invite you to set your heart on the good things that God is growing in your life. PJ, if you wouldn't mind, man, go ahead and give us a little bit of background jams. I was so encouraged by this story again in the pages of Scripture. And I don't know about how you heard the story of Joseph before. I don't know how you've engaged it before or heard it taught before. I know that Joseph is like this banner. We often say, man, like he's like exemplary, right? When it comes to faithfulness to God and integrity in moments, even hard moments. Like he's the guy that we kind of want to be like so that we can have the fruitfulness that he had, the maturity with his brothers, right? The patience in prison. For me, though, reading it again this go round, I really was just blown away by that idea of what we saw in Ephraim, in that second name of that second son, that God is making me fruitful despite my affliction. I believe that's just an encouraging word for every single person in the room. I mean, I would even argue that if you have a hard time believing in the Lord, there's something about that that would be hopeful and encouraging. It might even give you a little bit of like listening capacity in God's presence. But for me, as I step into the week ahead, I know I'm going to set my heart on the good that God is growing in my life. And here's how I'm going to do that. One way I'm going to do that is I'm going to look back, not look forward. And when I look back, I'm not going to look back on past mistakes. I'm not going to look back on the life and the decisions that I've find hard to reconcile. And when I say look back, I mean like a 24-hour period. Have you ever heard of the prayer of examine? The prayer of examine is a practice where at the end of the day, there's actually 5 questions. You can just Google it, and prayer of examine, it'll give you the 5 questions. But essentially what you do at the end of the day is you begin to look for where you see the goodness of God in your day. Because hindsight is 20/20. And so if I were to just look back, even right now, I mean, we're only, I don't know when you woke up this morning, but let's call it 7 a.m. We're only 4 hours into Sunday. Can you look back right now and see a moment where God showed up? Where God brought a good thing. Let it bloom. Let it shoot from affliction or blessing. So one thing I'm doing, man, I'm looking back. Another thing I'm doing is I'm looking up. I really do want to set my eyes on things above, as it says in Colossians. How are you keeping score in your life? Because depending upon how you keep score, that could quickly begin to leak into what you would call good and what you would call not so good. How was the weekend? Not so good. Why would we say that? Right? How's the first quarter of 2026 been so far? Pretty good. Why would we say that? When we truly begin, I'll use I statements. When I truly begin to set my heart on things above, to try and store up treasures in heaven as Jesus invites us to do. Make sure that my contributions are contributions of kindness and love and endearment and generosity, listening. It's a good day. It's hard to get listening wrong when you really give your heart to it. So I'm going to look back and look for good things of God. I'm going to look up and I'm going to look for, the standards of God. And I'm going to look ahead. I would invite you to look ahead. And see the good that God has for us on the horizon. all I can say to that simply is, man, like, I know tomorrow's going to be a good day. I know tomorrow's going to be a good day. Sure, do I have things tomorrow that are going to be like a handful? You bet. But I get to hold them with the Lord. And even those things that are going to be a handful, God is working good in the midst of it.